How often should you actually upgrade your underwater camera rig? That's a tricky question that we'll look at into today's video. Coming up. Hi and welcome back to the channel, and first of all let me wish you a very happy new year. I hope that all of you have started this new year in a good and positive way. I spent the last week or so up in the Swiss mountains, just taking some time off, enjoying the snow, enjoying the nature, trying to refocus my mind on the stuff that is going to be most important for me in the next couple of months. Now, like most of you, I have also come up with some New Year's resolutions. One of them is to be diving more this year that is ahead of us, and in particular to be diving more for fun and pleasure. Another one is to be more effective when it comes to creating content for the channel here. Now, how can I be more effective creating the content here? One of the things that popped up in my mind was, I think I need a new underwater camera rig. And then I started thinking about it, and this is what brought me onto the topic for today's video, where I want to go into is it really necessary to upgrade your underwater camera rig on a regular basis, and how often should that happen? Now, we'll cover different parts of your underwater camera rig in today's video. We'll talk about cameras and housings, we'll talk about lights, we'll talk about lenses and ports, and we'll also talk about other accessories. And I'll try to give you my point of view on how often you should be exchanging and upgrading these individual components of your underwater camera rig. Now let's start off with the cameras first. Now, if we look back at 2020, the past year, and how many great cameras have come out onto the market in these past 12 months, one could easily think that you should be upgrading your camera for underwater filmmaking pretty much every couple months, really. But I don't think that's true for a couple of reasons. Now, when we talk about cameras and the according housings to the cameras, I think that it's more than enough if you upgrade your camera every couple of years. In particular, if you're using a larger mirrorless or DSLR camera, these cameras, the technology that is put into these cameras is not changing very rapidly. At least not the core technology. Yes, you will get higher frame rates, you will get better resolution, you will maybe even get stuff like better image stabilization, these kind of things. You will get that with the more current models. But that doesn't mean that models that are 2, 3 or even 4 years old, that they cannot produce really good underwater imagery. Now, I still film on my GH5 and my GH5S, and particularly the GH5, I think was first released in 2016, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a camera that is a good 4 years old, and up to this day, I'm still very, very happy with the imagery that I get out of my GH5. So for me, there's really no reason to upgrade my camera to one of the newer Canon or Sony models that come with just features that obviously the GH5 doesn't have, but that are not so important for me when it comes to filming underwater. Obviously, if you're filming with a smaller camera, if you're filming with, let's say, a TG5, TG6, or even action cameras like the Osmo Action, the GoPro models, with these kind of cameras, you could probably say that it makes sense to upgrade. I wouldn't say every single new release that comes out, but let's say every second release that comes out. So if you're filming, let's say, on the GoPro 7 right now, it might make sense to upgrade to the GoPro Hero 9. But if you're on the 8, I don't know if there's really such a big difference to the GoPro Hero 9, and whether or not it really makes sense to make that upgrade. But that's something that everyone has to decide for themselves. In my opinion though, I think if you're filming with larger cameras, every 3-4 years or even more than that, to do an upgrade in that interval is plenty. If you're filming with smaller cameras, action cameras, point and shoot cameras, maybe every 2 years should be just fine to upgrade your gear in that interval. And just a little side note here, the time frames that I give you in this video, it doesn't mean that you should upgrade your camera gear within that time frame. It's just my personal opinion that I'm sharing with you here. As long as you're obviously happy with your camera and the imagery that comes out of that camera, there is no real need to upgrade that whatsoever, and you can spend that money probably better on getting some accessories and stuff that will make you that will make it easier for you to be more creative in creating the images underwater. Now, with the housing for your underwater camera, normally you would pick that out as you choose a camera, and most of the time you will stick with that housing throughout the entire time you're using that camera. The only reason I can see why you would exchange just the housing and keep the camera is if you're just really unhappy with the way the housing works on the camera. It just doesn't work for you. You have trouble operating the housing or the camera through the housing. That would really be the only reason for me to exchange the housing but keep the camera. Let's look at lenses and ports next, and this is something that goes sort of hand in hand with your camera, and I don't think that you should be exchanging your lenses really too much. Now, most of the time, if you're happy with the go-to lens that you're using underwater, just stick with that lens. Don't change anything, unless you obviously change the camera, and then you might have to change your lens as well. Now, I've been shooting on the 12 to 60mm Leica lens, that was the kit lens with my GH5 and is my main lens when it comes to shooting underwater, and I've been shooting with that ever since I've got this camera and the housing. It took me about a year and a half before I got a second lens, which was the 100mm Canon macro lens and the according port by Nauticam, and the only reason I got this was because I actually wanted to step up my macro filmmaking, my macro shots underwater, and I was not able to do that with the 12 to 60mm, even at the 60mm range. So I needed a dedicated macro lens, and that's why I stepped up. If that's not something of interest to you, if you're happy with the lens that you're using every day, don't change anything. Stick to that lens, stay with it, and only just exchange it when you exchange the camera and the housing. Moving on to a component of your underwater camera gear that, in my opinion, is amongst the most important ones, which is your underwater video lights. I'm a firm believer that bringing enough light with you on your dives will immensely increase the quality of the content, the imagery that you can collect while being underwater. I also think that it does make sense to spend some extra time researching what kind of underwater video lights are available and which ones suit your needs the best. And also I think that it does make sense to spend a little extra for some higher quality lights. Now, nowadays, most of the modern lights, they are high quality and they will last you for a very long time. The main thing that will change in the near future is probably the output power of the lights and the way that you can actually operate these lights. Now, a lot of manufacturers have started integrating or offering remote controls for their lights, so this is something that is gonna be more available or more widely available on different models in the near future, I'm thinking, and obviously the output power. But if you can find a light that you're happy with the output power that works for you for what you're trying to film, and you're happy with the operation of the light, how to turn it on, how to change intensity levels, all that sort of stuff, then this light will probably be with you for the next couple of years. And I don't think that you need to be upgrading your underwater video lights any more frequently than what you would do with your underwater camera and housing. And last but not least, let's talk about your other accessories that you use for filming underwater, like your filters, like your tripods, your arms, your floats, all that sort of stuff. Now these things, they can be universally used with different camera models and different housing models, so I do think that it makes sense to stay on top of the news that manufacturers release and the new models and new types that they release for these accessories, and to upgrade these ones more frequently than with the other pieces of equipment that we've covered. Having good quality filters, having arms that will help you balance your underwater housing, floats maybe even that will help you to just get that perfect buoyancy of your underwater camera right. That will make a big difference in terms of how you can handle your camera rig underwater, the easiness of use of it, and therefore also the quality of the images that you will be able to acquire by getting a really stable camera position in the first place. So summing up today's video, how often should you upgrade your underwater camera rig? In my opinion, not too often really. I don't think there is any reason to upgrade your underwater camera rig unless you have really reached the limitations of the camera rig that you're using right now. You might say now though, Matthias, but I'm not happy with the imagery that comes out of my underwater camera rig. Well, what's the reason for that? Is it that you've really reached the limitations of the camera and your camera cannot offer what you need in terms of getting the desired footage? If that's the case, by all means, upgrade to a camera that gives you the features that you want and need to be able to capture the footage that you want and need. But if it's just because you don't know how to work the camera and how to get the imagery, which in most cases that actually is the case, then upgrading to a newer model camera is not really going to solve your problem. I recommend spending some extra time with your camera, getting to know your camera and your underwater camera rig inside and out, and only then, when you're certain that you have actually reached the limitations of your camera and you really do need that 120 frames 4K capability, or you do need RAW capability on your camera, only then upgrade to the next model. And it doesn't work the way that many people think, that by buying a newer, a better camera or better gear for filming underwater, they will automatically get better images. It's still the person behind the camera that captures the images, captures the footage, and the camera is only the tool to do the job. I hope this makes sense, and I hope this was a useful episode of the Underwater Filmmaking School for you guys today. If that was the case, and if you got something out of this video, please do hit that like button and also consider subscribing to the channel so you're not missing out on any future content that will be uploaded here on the channel. Now, I'm very interested also to hear your thoughts about the upgrading of your underwater camera rig and how often that should happen. Please let me know down in the comment section below. I'm interested in learning how long you've been using your current model and whether or not you're actually thinking of upgrading to a new underwater camera rig. And also don't forget to let me know what you're actually using now in terms of camera, housing, lights and accessories. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic time diving and capturing the amazing underwater world, and I will see you in the next one.